She wiped sweat from her brow with the back of her wrist and never once imagined that the next customer walking toward her small roadside stall would change the direction of her entire life. Under the blazing afternoon sun of Lagos, along a dusty street lined with Okada bikes and shouting conductors, Amarachi Nwosu stood behind a wooden table stacked with steaming plates of jollof rice, fried plantain, and grilled fish. Her hands moved fast, scooping, wrapping, serving, smiling at strangers even when her feet ached and her back throbbed from standing since 5 in the morning. She was 26, and to most people who passed her stall, she was simply the food seller, a face among thousands trying to survive, in a city that never slowed down for anyone's dreams. But there was something about Amarachi that made people look twice. It wasn't just her beauty, though she had that in abundance, warm brown skin, a smile that could soften the hardest of hearts, and eyes that carried both strength and sorrow. It was the way she treated every customer with dignity, whether they came in a suit or in torn slippers. She remembered names. She remembered stories. She gave extra plantain to the old men who could not afford much, and she never once complained, even though her own life was quietly falling apart behind that smile. Before we continue this heartwarming journey, if you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment to like this video, drop a comment, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Whispering Tale Stories so you never miss a story like this one. Now let's continue. Amarachi had not always sold food on the street. 2 years earlier, she had been a promising accounting graduate with dreams of working in a real office, wearing heels, carrying a laptop bag, being somebody. But when her father fell ill with a kidney condition that drained every kobo the family had, and her younger brother still needed school fees, dreams became a luxury she could no longer afford. She took over her late mother's old food stall, the same one her mother had run for 15 years before cancer took her, and she turned her pain into discipline. Every morning she woke before the sun, prepared her ingredients, and pushed her cart to the same corner near the busy business district, hoping today would be a little better than yesterday. That particular Tuesday started like any other. The heat was thick, the road buzzing with impatient horns and hurried footsteps, when a sleek black SUV pulled up unusually close to her stall. She barely looked up at first, assuming it was just another driver looking for a parking spot. But the door opened and out stepped a tall man in an immaculate navy suit, sunglasses reflecting the sun, his presence immediately shifting the energy of the entire street. Passers-by stared. Even the mechanic across the road stopped hammering to look. His name was Kelechi Adebanjo, 34 years old, CEO of one of the fastest-growing logistics companies in Lagos. He was a man used to boardrooms, private jets, and investors hanging on his every word. He was not used to standing in the sun on a dusty street corner, but that day his driver had taken an unfamiliar route due to traffic diversion, and hunger, real simple hunger, had led him straight to Amarachi's stall. He asked for a plate of jollof rice with fish, expecting nothing more than a quick meal before returning to his world of glass towers and closed doors. But when she handed him the plate, their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. The kind of moment neither could explain, but both would remember. She did not know who he was. She simply saw a tired man who looked, despite his expensive suit, strangely lonely. He sat on the wooden bench beside her stall, something his assistant found almost alarming, and ate slowly, watching her interact with other customers. He noticed how she laughed with an elderly man who could only pay half price, how she wiped down the table for a mother struggling with a crying baby, how she carried herself with quiet pride despite clearly having so little. It moved him in a way boardroom negotiations never could. From that day, Kelechi began returning, not once a week but almost daily, always around the same time, always ordering the same plate. His driver grew used to the strange new routine, and slowly Amarachi began to recognize him, not as a wealthy stranger but as a familiar face who always asked about her day, who remembered that her father was sick, who once quietly paid for the young student behind him in line without saying a word. Word began to spread along the street. Whispers followed him whenever his car appeared, some admiring, some jealous, some outright cruel. People started saying Amarachi was chasing money, that she had used charm to trap a rich man, that a food seller had no business catching the eye of someone so far above her station. Blessing, a rival vendor 2 stalls away, made sure the gossip traveled fast, hoping to humiliate Amarachi out of business. Amarachi heard every insult, felt every stare, and though her heart ached, she kept serving her food with the same grace, refusing to let bitterness poison her spirit. Then one afternoon, everything nearly fell apart. Kelechi arrived not in his usual calm manner, but visibly tense, his phone ringing non-stop, his assistant whispering urgently beside him. His company was facing a hostile takeover attempt, a scandal engineered by a jealous business rival threatening years of his hard work. In that moment of crisis, instead of retreating to his glass office, he found himself walking straight to her stall, needing more than anything 5 minutes of peace and honesty in a world suddenly full of betrayal. Amarachi did not know the details of his business, but she recognized suffering when she saw it. She sat him down, gave him food, and simply listened. She reminded him gently that a man's worth was not only in his company or his money, but in the character he showed when everything was falling apart. Her words, simple and sincere, steadied him more than any advisor's counsel that week. That evening he returned to his office with renewed clarity, made calculated decisions instead of panicked ones, and within days, successfully defended his company from the takeover. It was then Kelechi realized that Amarachi had given him something priceless, not flattery, not ambition, but genuine care with nothing expected in return. He began showing up not just to eat, but to help. Quietly, he arranged for her father to receive proper medical treatment at a private hospital, without ever mentioning it directly to her, letting the hospital staff simply say it had been taken care of. When Amarachi discovered the truth, she wept, overwhelmed not by the money, but by the fact that someone finally saw her, truly saw her beyond her circumstances. Their bond deepened, not through grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but through small moments, a shared laugh over burnt plantain, an honest conversation about loss, a comfortable silence that needed no explanation. Kelechi began to understand that everything he had built meant little if he had no one real to share it with, and Amarachi began to believe, for the first time since her mother's passing, that perhaps life still had good things reserved for her. If this story has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to believe that good things still happen to good people. Your support means more than you know to this channel. Months later, the street corner that once knew Amarachi only as the food seller watched in disbelief as Kelechi arrived, not in his usual suit but dressed simply, kneeling before her stall in front of everyone, holding not a briefcase but a small velvet box. He told her in front of the same people who once mocked her that she had shown him more strength, more grace, and more truth than any boardroom ever had, and that he wanted to build the rest of his life beside someone who valued kindness over status. Tears streamed down Amarachi's face as she nodded, her hands trembling, the same hands that had served thousands of plates, now shaking with a joy she never dared to dream of. Before we say goodbye for today, if this story stirred something in your heart, drop the word kindness in the comments below so we know this story reached you. Amarachi never forgot where she came from. Even after becoming Kelechi's wife, she continued visiting her old street corner, not to sell food, but to teach other young women the very skills that once kept her family alive, proving that dignity, patience, and an unshaken heart can transform even the most unlikely, beginning into an extraordinary story of love, hope, and second chances.